So I did go to the Lost and Found, and they had this, which is a little old, but I guess it still kind of fits. As it turns out, I think this works perfectly because we're going to talk about the Disney decade and stuff that happened in the very late 1980s to the 1990s. And we have two very special guests to help us. Of course, Tammy Tucky from the Tammy Tucky Show, and Paul Osterhout from Imagineering. So come on up, guys. And we're going to talk about, I think, the best decade that ever existed. You can take the middle?
Me? Or no,
Paul,
there.
take the middle.
Perfect. There we go. Musical chairs.
Oh, did we lose chair?
We lost a chair. I know. I was like, where are we sitting? Yay, JT, you get to sit next to me.
Good.
Awesome.
That's good.
So about 4 or 5 months ago, these illustrious gentlemen asked me if I would come and speak about the Disney decade. I started my career in Imagineering before Epcot and worked all the way up till mid-2005. It's interesting about the Disney decade because this will work. No?
Oh, big green. There.
Is it tapping? Bippity bobbity boo.
There we go.
Oh, there you go. Got it.
This is most of what happened in the Disney decade. All of these projects. I didn't work on all of them, but I worked on quite a few. So in preparation, I've created this like 3-hour spectacular PowerPoint presentation.
Paul, we only have an hour.
What? An hour?
Yes.
53 minutes, actually.
All right.
53 minutes.
Then we're going to do it in 3D. And yes, this is the actual prop that Gonzo pushes through the door. How I got it, I don't know. Anyway, so let's start with Muppet Vision 3D, okay? As you know, early in the 1990s, the Walt Disney Company was going to acquire Henson Associates, Jim Henson's the actual company name. Jim loved experimental filmmaking. I mean, that was what his really passion was. And so he wanted to do more of that creative stuff and not run a big company. So it was decided that we were going to create Muppet Studios. Now here's a model of part of Muppet Studios. We don't have the back end. And Muppet Studios at the time was the 3D film, Muppet Vision 3D, which Jim had a passion for because he always wanted to put the Muppets in a 3D film environment. And we had the Great Muppet Ride, which was the other attraction. We had Rizzo Rat's Pizzeria. We had the Swedish Chef Cooking School. We had the merchandise location. And there was a lot of other interstitial things throughout the land, little discoveries. Because we have less than an hour, we're not going to talk about all that. We're really going to focus on the 3D film, which is what Jim's passion was. Now, we set up the teams at Imagineering. One team was going to do the Muppet movie ride, and one team was going to focus on the 3D film. And this is a picture of us with Jim in his office in New York. Let me go back row, left to right. Michael Sprout, who was the writer on the Great Muppet Movie Ride. Next to him in the white beard is Michael Frith. Michael Frith was Henson's chief creative officer, chief creative director. Marcello Vignelli, you guys can help me there, who was an illustrator with Disney, was working on Muppet Movie Ride. Joanne Cicero, next to him, Muppet Movie Ride. The woman with the female with Jim holding her shoulder is actually my wife, Anne, who was a writer on the land. Corey Sulson is next to Jim. Corey was the art director for the Great Movie Ride, and so it made perfect sense he was going to be an art director on the Great Muppet Movie Ride. Then there's me with that beautiful sweater. And then that's Jim Lewis is next to him. Jim Lewis wrote a lot of the stuff for the land. Jim Lewis did not write the film. That was done by Bill Prady. Have you ever heard of Bill Prady? Have you ever seen
2.5 Men?
2.5 Men? Well, no. Big Bang Theory.
Oh, Big Bang, yeah.
He created the Big Bang Theory after he left Muppets. So that's Jim Lewis. He was the writer. Sitting down is Kathy Rogers. Kathy was our producer on Muppet Vision 3D. Colette Hope was the interior designer on the Great Muppet Movie Ride. And then the guy with the white jacket is Craig Yo, and Craig was the president of Henson Associates at the time. So this was, sadly, this was 2 months before Jim passed. So we were lucky we would often meet in New York with the Henson group. They would often meet with us in Glendale. It really was a collaborative spirit between two very highly creative organizations. So this is basically the Muppet Vision 3D team, the kind of the executive creative team. That's me, and I swear to God, those pants are coming back in style. Okay. You'll see. Eric Jacobson standing up on the, and then that's Kathy Rogers next to the penguin. So that was our creative team for the Muppet Vision ride attraction. For us, Muppets always seemed to, they lived in New York. That's where we, in our minds, that's where they were from. They lived in New York. Even though the show itself, that we all know, was filmed in the UK, in London, it just felt like the Muppets belonged in New York. And so a lot of the styling of the land was kind of based on New York architecture, including the water towers and the clock towers and all the brickwork was basically all of New York. So this was the Muppet Labs. Remember, we're building a laboratory. We're not building a soundstage. This is actually Muppet Labs. That's our story. This is a laboratory. And so there was a lot of stuff that had a laboratory kind of feel to it. Obviously, there's more of those interstitial gags where they didn't finish painting because the scaffolding fell, and there's lots of those kinds of things that happened in the land. This is a model of the theater looking down towards the orchestra pit. Interesting about this, I think this could be one of the first times I'm aware of where we did projection mapping. The entire theater inside those big walls on the sides, they were all projection mapped. Now this was years before we had video projectors, so these were actually giant slide projectors. We had an artist named Marie Miller who hand-painted glass slides of all the ornamentation. They're all hand-painted, each one of them. They all had to register and line up. And then the back, I don't want that, I want this. And then, of course, the back with the Yell and Howl Theater, projection room, where, of course, if you remember the film, that's where the Swedish chef comes out and fires his blunderbuss. And then here is the actual theater. So everything you see between those columns, that's all projected. And it's all projected on scrim because, you remember the film, at the end, the entire theater kind of blows up.
So if those weren't projected, what color would those red panels be?
They were white. They were a gray color. Yep. And every time somebody walked up on the catwalk where the projectors were, we all held our breath because if they nudged a projector or accidentally touched it, everything would get out of registration. And so it was like, don't go upstairs unless you absolutely have to.
Did it just switch one slide to the?
Yeah, it's just one slide switch. Yep. And then because they're scrims, then we lit behind the scrims, and you could see the destruction of the theater behind. Yep. And there, the back of the theater. Now, as we continued the development of the show, Henson and that group were responsible for doing the film, or our group was responsible for doing all the in-theater effects, the animation, all of that stuff fell on us. Obviously with Henson's oversight, but we were basically in charge of all of this kind of stuff. And then, again, Marie Miller, that was like kind of the artwork that started where Marie Miller would then paint that on a piece of glass. And then if you see over in the top left, you can see some of the art direction stuff that we did. We located where we wanted the screen to blow out at the very end. So behind the screen, those were, again, voids that would happen in theater effects. Remember, in our story, Bunsen Honeydew and
Beaker,
thank you. They created this space just to show this film. So when you're in the pre-show, that's why it looks like it's a piece of scenery, because that's really what it was. It wasn't a real theater, even though we modeled the theater after the television show with the opera boxes with Stadler and Waldorf and we made it so that Bean Bunny came on the other side too. So that's what we did. Now, for half a second here, you're all going to be Imagineers, you're going to be art directors, and this is a typical, this was from my notebook, typical art direction of watching the show and just making notes. Well, we can't see this, so the orchestra comes up too late, or the blunderbuss or the Swedish chef doesn't come out soon enough. And these are all basic notes that we would give the animators, or special effects people, or whoever needed to see it, because this was our process. We do it. We don't stop. We don't ever stop making it better until they finally say, "We're unlocking the doors. Go away." This is, as you know, Jim sadly passed away before the film was complete. It was thought that the principal photography was complete with Jim, but Frank Oz came in and basically finished the film, and they determined that they needed a few more scenes shot, so they shot a few more scenes, and then next to Frank is obviously me, and then that's Steve Whitmire. Steve Whitmire was Bean Bunny, a couple other, he was the Waldo character, and Steve took over for Kermit, doing the Kermit voice and puppeting when Jim passed away. And that's me and Steve at the closing of Muppets about 2 months ago. And so this is an interesting picture. It's me with the characters, but the reason we took this picture is, so the challenge, the biggest challenge for us, the biggest challenge was not the film, was not the animation, was getting the performance of the Muppets to be consistent. Because Frank Oz was Miss Piggy. Jim Henson was Kermit the Frog. You couldn't separate them. You couldn't bring in, it was difficult to say, we're going to bring in this guy to be Miss Piggy. Obviously, they had to do it eventually because Frank retired from doing Miss Piggy. But at the time, in our minds, how are we going to duplicate their performances in the theater, show after show after show? Luckily, Henson had been experimenting with what they called the Waldo mitt, which was essentially a remote-controlled computerized system where the puppet would be moving and the puppeteer would be off stage. So we basically took that idea, and instead of a puppeteer doing it, a computer would do it, but we would have Jim and Frank and Jeff Jewell and all the performers do the first performances, and we would capture that stuff on computer. This right here is, the reason we took this picture is Sweetums behind there was actually performed, not voiced, but performed by John Henson, Jim's son. John came down to Orlando, and he trained the first Sweetums characters on how Sweetums lumbered and walked and moved his head. And so that's actually John Henson in that costume right there, and we decided to take a picture with the other characters. So here is behind-the-scenes stuff of us recording Jim and Jerry as Statler and Waldorf, and this is them performing against the film that we're going to now give this information to our animators who are going to animate the animated figures, okay? And if you could make sure the audio's up, because I'm not sure the audio is perfect here. If you could do that, it'd be great. Thanks.
Hey, Waldorf, what are we doing here anyway?
Well, it's one of those 3D movies.
Ah.
Yeah, put on your glasses, Statler. There.
Hey, look, Waldorf.
Huh?
There's Henry Kissinger.
Well, that's not Henry Kissinger.
Sorry, lady.
Oh! Yeah.
Now they're reacting to what's on the screen.
Hey, you know that conductor's a penguin?
Well, it's not surprising. These Muppet shows are for the birds. Oh, it's starting.
Yeah.
Oh, Waldorf, it's that dumb bear again.
Yeah. Hey, Bear, you're not even funny in 3D.
Oh, no, not you guys. How did you get here?
We entered a contest.
Yeah, we lost.
Why is the flower like pink? Give up, because they both like big rain. On the market. Got it.
Now, this act's all washed up.
Yeah. Hey, Bear, throw in the towel. Okay, better?
Bunny,
Hey, hey.
bunny.
Hey, well, what's all the commotion about?
Bunny ran away.
Well, you know what they say, hair today, gone tomorrow. Oh.
This is a very moving moment.
Yeah, I wish they'd move it to Pittsburgh.
Okay, stop tape. There we go, take 4. 3, 2, 1.
We surrender! We surrender! What'd you think?
Do we have time to go to the bathroom before the next show?
We can't, you old fool. We're bolted to the seats.
Oh. Oh, well.
Once again, on page 15.
Page 15.
This is Jerry
Sweetums-
Jewell reading Sweetums lines.
Sweetums reaction. Ready? Page 15, Sweetums reaction.
Thanks.
Page 16, Sweetums dialogue.
Hey, where are you?
Hey, Bunny! Oh, Bunny! Where are you? Bunny! Oh, Bunny! Bunny ran away.
On down the bottom.
Anybody seen a bunny?
Next page 17.
I don't see a bunny. Where? Where? Oh, nothing up there but a bunny. A bunny? Hey, Kermit! Kermit!
And then on page 19.
I'll save you, penguins!
What am I meant? Bottom of page 20. I'll save your penguin. Bottom.
Oh, the fireworks. Stop.
19. Oh. Oh, here it is. Okay.
Oh no! The fireworks!
Once more.
Oh no! The fireworks!
And then at the bottom.
Wow! You people have to see that film that's going on in here! What an ending!
One.
Doesn't that bring you back to the show, just hearing that voice?
It's so interesting, the line changes. Like the Kissinger joke getting switched for Goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was Jim like to work with? Because I think a lot of us have such, we miss him, obviously.
For me, Jim Henson was my Walt Disney, right? I didn't grow up in the 50s. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. So I didn't have the coonskin hats and the wonderful world of Disney. I had the Muppets and Sesame Street. And so Jim Henson was my Walt Disney. He forgot he was Jim Henson because he was so accommodating and friendly, and there was no idea that was bad. You know, we would have brainstorming sessions, and someone would say something like, would be really like not really practical or not really relevant, and you knew Jim didn't like it because he'd go, what else we got? But he would never say anything was bad. He would just say, yeah. And so we'd all start to pick up on that, like, I don't think he likes that idea. But he was so generous with his time and just so he just loved to talk to people about creativity, about filmmaking, about entertaining people. And he was just so nice. And you could see that one picture that in his office, he was just like, come up to my office, let's take a picture, let's do this, and so it's just, he was great. And everybody with Henson Associates was the same way. Bill Prady, Jim Lewis, Michael Fripp, we were all in it together, and there was zero egos at all. After we finished Muppets, I got transferred over to Tomorrowland, where we were trying to fix some stuff. What were we trying to fix? Without some clear goals, how do we know we were successful, right? So what were we trying to fix? Tomorrowland was dated. Yeah. Remember, when they first designed Tomorrowland, man had not even landed on the moon yet, right? They probably designed it in the late 60s, opened in 71, right? So it was dated. And besides the fact, 82, Epcot opened. So Epcot's job was to tell what the real future was going to be like, which kind of let us off the hook of trying to predict what the future was. Because, by the way, it's a treadmill. You can never design the future, because as soon as you design it, it's not the future anymore. We wanted to create a sense of placemaking and story. All the other lands had placemaking and story. Frontierland, you were 1870s, and there was a gold rush happening, and Adventureland, you were stuck in the jungle somewhere. It didn't matter if the jungles were South America or Africa, it was the jungles. And so there was a story to it. You had an agency to it, right? You kind of felt like, oh, I'm part of this story. I don't know what the story is, I don't know what the plot is, but I'm part of this environment and this story. We wanted to create a sense of discovery. You stood at the bridge in Tomorrowland, and you could see all the way to Astrojets, and there was no sense of what's around the corner, what's coming next. So we wanted to create a sense of discovery, and then we wanted to create better wayfinding to the attraction entrances, okay? So what we did was we had a brainstorming session where we decided, let's go back in time. What did our grandfathers think their future was going to be? Robots would clean our clothes and cook our meals and clean our houses and that kind of stuff. Now, there are two areas that where you could look at science fiction. You could say the 1950s, or you could say like the late 20s, early 30s. 1950s was about being invaded, right? It was a thin veil to communism, essentially, that we're going to be invaded and we have to fight off these aliens and all these people that are going to try to harm us. The 20s and 30s was much more optimistic. The robots were going to do things for us, and it was just more of an optimistic feel. So we decided to land on the 1920s and 30s, popular mechanics, popular science, all that. And so this was our little team here. That's Kevin Rafferty all the way with the mustache on the other side, Tom Flowers, and Tom Morris. Who? Maureen. Thank you, Maureen. So this was our show set group that started to develop some of the ideas, okay? Now, here's what Tomorrowland looked like. As you can see all the way down to the Astrojets, and there's just no sense of place. Like, where are we? Are we on some World's Fair somewhere? Because that's what it felt like to me. The other thing that was interesting is in the mid-70s, they added the Wedway People Mover, as you can see, which was great. But the problem was it was a very strong horizontal architectural element, which basically hid the attraction entrances. Now the attraction entrances weren't on the street. They were underneath the Wedway People Mover. So we wanted to try and fix that a little bit. Now, early on, there was a lot of discovery, just a lot of riffing on ideas on what the future of Tomorrowland. And Tom Morris led a lot of this early stuff before they pushed him over to Paris again. And eventually I came in and started working with them, and we started to look at different ideas. Some were a bit brutal, a little bit darker than what we wanted to do. We wanted to do something a little bit more optimistic and fun. And so we started now to getting a little bit closer to where we wanted to go. And eventually we got really close, and now once we get to this point, we want to see it in 3-dimension. Of course, we didn't have computers that could do 3-dimension at the time. We build dimensional models. So here is the dimensional model we created for Tomorrowland. Obviously starting with the archway. So let me get back to the story. of what the land is. We decided that we were going to create something from the 1930s, but we wanted to create the city of Tomorrowland. So you entered the city of Tomorrowland, and now each of the attractions has a place in the city of Tomorrowland. It's almost like we have a neighborhood of all these connected buildings which create a city. So that was kind of our story. So your agency, or who you were a citizen or you were a visitor to the city of Tomorrowland, okay? And again, more of the model. We did the entire model over several months. And the Astro Orbiter, like that. And even things that did not get built, like the Astronomers Club. This was over at Tomorrowland Terrace. You know, budgets, what are you going to do? And then once we get the model done, now the architects and the show set designers start to elevate everything. So this now gets to be like this, and then it goes to the engineering group and the architect, and they start to tear it apart, and eventually we get to actually building something. Now, here's something about this that I'm going to talk about. A few things I'm going to talk about. First of all, you see the graphic on the front. That's the entrance to the land. You know, like any big city would have the Elks Club, Lions Club, Chamber of Commerce meets on Wednesday morning at the IHOP, or whatever it is. Well, this was our version of that, of crossing into the threshold of the land. Subtly, you can see that we have what we call the icons are stepping out over the Wedway People Mover. Those were the attraction entrances. So they stepped out over. So now you know exactly where Circle Vision is, or Timekeeper, because it's right there in front of you. The other thing that does is it starts to block the view. So now we have this sense of what's around the corner. I can't see everything. Even though the Star Jets were way above, you know, Marty's Ten Commandments have a weenie at the end of the pathway. The weenie is still there. You just can't see the whole thing. It doesn't get all exposed at the same time. The other subtle thing we did was in the paving pattern, we started to create a roadway that kind of bends around. So we don't like to do curbs in theme parks because people will step over them and fall, and it impedes strollers and wheelchairs and all that. So we just kind of implied this pathway, this roadway. And this is what it looked at night. It had a completely different look at night. We had I think we had 3 miles of neon that was hidden throughout the land. And the idea was that the land was alive. Let me just back up here 1 second. The land was essentially alive. So those fins that are on the Wedway People Mover were kind of like they pulled in the air and purified it. And that archway, the paneling on the top there on the left was kind of like what we thought were like solar panels. And everything is made to look like it was articulated. It could move. And in the music, the background track, the music was very mechanical, so even the music felt like it could move things. It was very mechanical sounding. And of course, the palm trees, when it's raining, we don't need shade, so the palm tree closes up and goes back down. Of course, it was always stuck in that position. Now,
actually, can you clear? Was that meant to move, or was it always static?
No,
okay,
it was always static.
Okay.
Yeah, it was always static. What really sets a city apart or an urban environment apart is what we call street furniture. Could be road signs, could be newspaper vending machines, could be bus benches and bus stops. It could be some wayfinding, how to get to the public transportation. It could be all of those things that create street furniture. Now, our street furniture wanted to be interactive. We wanted to have all of these senses of discovery throughout the land, right? So here's the original drawing of the entry graphic, and then you can see the entry graphic there. This was the mailbox, mail idea that you could put in a pneumatic tube and send mail somewhere, and you could pull the lever to wherever it was going to go.
And there's audio of what that did on your cassette tapes that you got, so you can hear what the sounds that made when you pull the lever.
And this is the newspaper guy. It's interesting. There's a couple things I'm going to point out here. You see the original drawing where his hat was like a dish, a satellite dish. And we thought, well, if we're really going to make it a newspaper guy, a newspaper person from the late 20s would have had a derby cap. So we changed that and we put the derby cap on him. And the other thing I want to point out here is, remember, if you're living in the 1930s and you're trying to imagine what the future is, The only way for you to imagine it is to to riff off things you already know. So that's a typewriter in his chest, because that's what they would have known. That's how you're going to print a newspaper. You're going to use a typewriter. So that's a typewriter in his chest. And then Kevin wrote a bunch of funny stories that were in the newspaper, in the lower part of the newspaper. And this was also one of the first times that I can remember that we used proximity sensors. So as you walked up to each item, it automatically activated it. And now you can't go to any bathroom in the world without proximity sensors turning on water or flushing the toilet for you. But we started it! The telephone booths, of course. This was the original drawing is in the center, the original concept is in the center, and then the booths on the left and right. That's an art direction. On the left is an art direction kind of thing, calling out what colors we're going to paint it and what materials.
Did you select who was going to do the little clips that you hear when you do the calling, or was it any Imagineer who got to record something?
Kevin wrote all of that and went off and recorded all of that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, that was all Kevin. Yeah, you can blame him. And then here is the famous granite ball. That's me. We had it made up in Washington, D.C. There's this company that kind of repaired all the national monuments, all the marble and on national monuments. They did this for us. I got a giant 4-foot styrofoam ball and got some pinstriping tape and some Letraset dots, and I created that thing. We shipped it up to them, and they probably followed it pretty faithfully, even though it was like just an idea, like kind of like this, but I imagine because of their precision work, they probably just measured everything exactly, and that's how it came out. There were several things that we didn't do, just some concepts here of things that we did not do. The dog walking and other robots that would come up to you and talk to you. Any Imagineer that will come up here will tell you we did so much more than we could have. We could have done so much more if we had the budget for it or the time. There's always so much extra that we don't get a chance to do. The partners, they were talking about partners earlier. Tell you, Coke was great. It's always better if you got a partner that wants to be part of the story, right? And when they don't want to be part of the story, I call it brandalism or logo slapping, right? They don't want to be part of the story, they just want their name up there, and we try to avoid that all the time. We want our partners, we want our sponsors, our host to be part of the story. And so, the Coke Cool Zone here, the spaceship has landed, it's refueling. The refueling operation is the reason for the smoke to come down. And oh, by the way, you can get a Coke here too. So that was the Coke Cool Spot. And then everybody's favorite lounge singer.
Yay! The best part.
I personally know him, by the way. And he wrote this lovely thing for me. He autographed his picture for me. This was not part of the original scope. We had, how many of you went to the park in the 70s and saw Michael Eisberg? Michael Eisberg, yeah. He performed at the Tomorrowland Terrace stage, and it was a seasonal thing, I think, at the time, because he wasn't always there. But we thought, wow, we got to Tomorrowland Terrace. We've done new menu boards, maybe some color changes, whatever, but we needed to do something more. There was this extra figure, and I don't remember where it came from. We had a figure, and it was at the time that the Jim Henson dinosaur show was on television. So we said, let's make it look like the same coloring. So that's the same coloring as the dinosaur on the TV show. But let's make him a lounge singer, right? And we talked the project managers into giving us a little bit of money, and we were able to build the organ, and we were able to program it. And a lot of this happened because people worked on it on their own. And that's why it's there, and maybe why it's so popular too, because there was this love of Sonny and a passion. And many of you that were at RetroMagic a couple of years ago got to meet George Wilkins. George wrote the music, Kevin Rafferty wrote the lyrics, and let me tell you about how it was done. It was recorded in George Wilkins's garage. Okay? We didn't have
And his wife is one of the space angels, Laurie. So
we didn't have money for a studio. So George wrote the music, he just because, hey, he believed in this. Kevin wrote the lyrics because he believed in it. We did it in his garage. We got a guy out of Palm Springs who was the voice of Sonny, and I don't remember his name, but he came out and did the work. We paid him a little bit, maybe some pizza or something, but he did the work, and it's really one of those enduring things that...
that was Cal David. I'm sorry, Cal David's wife, Laurie. She was one of the space angels. So Cal David voiced Sonny Eclipse.
I was going to say early on when I started, I haven't thought about some of this stuff maybe 30 years, so you're going to know more about this than I will. Okay? Because I'm going through my files and I'm going like, oh yeah, I remember we did that, didn't we? So you guys will know more. Anyway, Sonny Eclipse, and and talk about partners. Our partners in publicity planted this in the Weekly World News that UFOs buzz Disney World. Oh, by the way, there's a new Tomorrowland. And as luck would have it, Bigfoot was shot at the same time, so we missed getting the cover.
Darn.
But this is a real thing. They actually put this. We got the middle spread in the middle of the newspaper. So that's.
There was a TV special with Jonathan Frakes too, where they had a whole UFO conspiracy cover-up that tied it with Tomorrowland as well.
Wow. Yeah. So when we saw this, we go like, oh, this is the best. And so this was opening day. This is what it looked like. If you have forgotten, because it hasn't been like this for a while. This is what it looked like for opening day. And, the Imagineers like to come in and add things and make things better and create more interactive stuff and just create a better experience for you. So this is... What? Wait a minute. Okay, all right. We'll let that lie there. So here's something that you probably don't know. We had very high-level discussions to rename Tomorrowland to something different. And it started with marketing. They said, it's a whole new land. You've got new attractions. It doesn't even look like what it used to look like before. We need to market it. We can't market it as Tomorrowland because people will go like, oh yeah, we've been there. It has to be something new. And what they were referencing a lot was what Tim Delaney did in Paris with Discoveryland, which was the future. It was the past, but it was also a future look at the past. And Discoveryland was beautiful. And we had really high-level discussions. And we were able to convince everybody that Tomorrowland, it needed to stay Tomorrowland. And I want to read part of a memo that Kevin Rafferty wrote to some executives, we're not going to say who they were, about why we were passionate about keeping Tomorrowland, okay? Now, it's going to come up here, but I'm still going to read it because I know in the back you won't be able to see it, okay? And I probably won't be able to see it on the monitor anyway, so it doesn't matter. So there's like 3 or 4 pages before we get to this part, okay? In order to create something original, then we designed towards a playful future, one that captured both a timelessness and a light-hearted optimism, inspired the perfect tomorrow, promised in the machine age of the 30s, as well various tomorrows depicted in other eras. Future fantasy influences came not only from H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, but from Buck Rogers, human-featured robots, and intergalactic entrepreneurs. In addition to these design influences, the land began to take on a whole new identity of its own by applying an overlay of newly created architectural and show elements. As you know, the design evolved into that which is currently under construction, a harmonious blending of science and community where everyday living is made better through invention and intergalactic influence. In fact, the entire new neighborhood was established to imply a grouping of themed addresses as in other Magic Kingdom lands. Once the new design was defined, it was suggested that perhaps Tomorrowland be given a new name. After creating a long list of new name proposals, however, the team seemed to favor the original. After all, this was not a brand new land, but rather a new take on a long-established, beloved land. Still, our team, along with Walt Disney World Marketing, presented several name options to our creative management, and We're calling in the big bucks. We're calling in the big name here, Michael Eisner. These lists generated a lot of good discussion regarding renaming the land. Finally, Michael agreed with the team that Tomorrowland is a classic Disney theme park name, and even though the land is now redesigned, its icon name will always remain inscribed in the hearts of Walt Disney World guests. They expect to see long-established land names when visiting the Magic Kingdom, or, as Tony Baxter would say, they feel a certain ownership. Michael actually said it best. We need to keep some of the expected Walt things like this. It was long in saying, but the above reasons are why we held on to the name Tomorrowland. The following is taken from the last page of the Tomorrowland Chamber of Commerce Visitor Guide. Yes, in our timeless community of the future, you will experience the amazing marvels of the world of tomorrow today. Come join us in Tomorrowland and believe in the promise of tomorrow. And that is Tomorrowland.
And I think you guys nailed every one of those design, things that you wanted to do. It really did turn from just a place to a community, and all of the gags and the references, like the just as you're standing in line for Alien Encounter, there's references to other buildings and other places. Like, it was so masterfully crafted, like really wrapped up in a beautiful package. You guys did a wonderful job on that.
Thank you.
As a preteen, it was the only place I wanted to go in Magic Kingdom. I spent so much time there. It was great. I love that land.
Yeah, it was once you think about it and you step back and someone says, well, if you're in Tomorrowland, before we did anything, where are you? Where are you? You're not in Liberty Square, which you're turn of the century northeast, and you're not in Frontierland, which is the Southwest in the 1870s, and you're like, what is Tomorrowland? So that was really kind of bothered us once we started to think about that. And it just felt like we needed to have something that ties it together. So even the attractions, you're not going to Circle Vision, you're going to the Tomorrowland Science Center, which happens to be giving a demonstration on, time travel. So that was kind of our conceit. Maybe we got too deep in some of it, maybe we didn't, but Miriam Pleasure would be proud. So in the mid 90s, there was an effort to start to put more of the Disney IP branded stuff into existing attractions where that IP did not exist. And the Enchanted Tiki Room was one of those things that it wasn't tied to a film or anything, any modern film, let's say. And so we had Iago, obviously the bird, and the idea was that Tiki Room is going to be under new management, and we're going to put in some of the newer Disney IP into this attraction. And the best part about this attraction for me was working with all the name talent. So there's Gilbert Gottfried.
Do you have a story of when you guys were not in the studio? Because I'm sure, because we've heard that this is his personality that we all know and love, but what was he like not being on mic?
So I have a story about that, but let me just say that's behind Gilbert is George Wilkins, who did the music, and that's Kevin Rafferty with the mustache, both legends. So we're recording Iago, and at the end of the day, we're done. And Gilbert says, okay, so what do you want to do? And kind of looking at me like, what do I want to do? It's like, yeah, why don't we go get some dinner? So he and I jumped in my car, and we drove in Santa Monica, there was a place called the 3rd Street Promenade, a lot of restaurants and places. And we go and we have dinner, and then after dinner, we're walking the promenade, and we walk down to the pier. You can walk to the pier, the famous Santa Monica Pier. And he was a big star. And everybody started coming up to him for pictures and autographs, and I'm just like, this is surreal. It's just him and I. And it was one of those nights that you go like, how did this happen? How did this happen? And we're just like we're old buds. And we just met like maybe 8 hours ago, right? But he was just so friendly, and I think he was a New Yorker, and I think he might have felt a little out of place, even though I'm sure there was somebody he could have called, friends or anything, but we just hung out, and he was just a super chill guy. Nothing like his on-screen character where he's screaming a lot. He was very quiet, and just like a normal guy. And it was just really, it was quite an amazing guy. And he nailed the performance as obviously you would expect. But it was a fun time. And then the other birds, Phil Hartman and Don Rickles. And sadly, all three of them have now passed on. Next to Don Rickles, that's John Solomon. John Solomon worked with Theme Park Productions. John Solomon was responsible for getting talent on board and all the contracts figured out. I worked a lot with John on this. I also worked a lot with John on Rock and Roller Coaster, who got Aerosmith all signed up. And again, that's Kevin Rafferty peering up over John Solomon's head. Kathy Mangum is between me and Phil Hartman. Kathy was in charge of the creative group at the time. And then audio guy, Glenn Barker. Thank you, Glenn Barker, who had done the recorded everybody. And so this was at 1401 Glendale. We had our own audio studios in 1401. So I'm going to show you something that maybe no one has seen before. It's a video. Again, we can keep the audio up a little bit. And so we're going to see a performance of the birds. And then I'm just going to let it roll through. You're going to see some test of Iago. Because now, the birds before were rather static. They moved their wings and they did this. But now we have the new animation where we wanted to do some squashing and stretching. And so we did some testing. You'll see some testing. And then also we wanted to bring more expression to the eyes. And so you'll see a little test on that. And that will bring us right on time. Okay? Here we go. Maybe.
Okay, stand by. We're going to take one here. Take one.
You'll hear Kevin Rafferty's voice.
I'll feed you the first line. Jose, wake up. It's showtime.
Oh, my siestas are getting shorter and shorter. Hey, Michael, mi amigo, it's showtime.
So it is. Pierre, you rascal, you. Let's put on the show.
Mon ami, I am always ready to put on the show. And so is my good friend, Fritz.
My goodness, you're all staring at us. We better start the show rolling.
Wait. We forgot to wake up the Glee Club.
Ole, it's showtime.
This is just one more with a little bit more doom. The volcanoes are exploding. These guys think they've had it. So one more read.
We are in for it. We are in for it. Or we are in for it.
That's fair. I think we have what we need here.
Wally, can we do that one more time and give us a couple of your famous squawks during that?
Yeah.
And then cut the time of that just in half, and
Okay.
we'll fade it out. Okay? Hang on. 17. You ain't never had a friend like me.
No. I never heard anything like that in my whole life.
3, 2, 1.
The Tiki Brothers of Disaster.
That's it. That's wonderful.
One of the things Jeff wanted me to do, and it was not a possibility, it was a requirement, was to have the jaw drop, because that's one of Iago's main characteristics. It was something that had to be here. So the jaw I'm simulating here is going to be dropping as well as opening. Something like this drops down as well as opens and closes. The magnet in the pupil is attracted to the magnet that's going to be on the up and down mechanism. And one of the things that I don't have right at this moment in this eye is we're going to fill it with fluid to give it a more lifelike look. It's silicone oil that takes some of the static look out of it. This is the eyebrow that is going to be in Iago that shows the frown, and it's going to have the surprise expression look. And we had a had a challenge with getting as much closure on the eye as possible without leaving an enormous gap.
Here's the squash and stretch.
This is so beautiful. Being in the show, I don't think I ever got to experience like how nice that was.
A couple versions of the eyeball. This was a projected, just to get that different look. So, in watching that recording, it reminded me that Alan Menken was down here staying at the Grand Floridian, and Kevin had rewritten lyrics for Friend Like Me to work in the show. And we were like panicked he was going to hate it. So they got a room for us over at the Grand Floridian. He had just finished breakfast, and he came in and met. And Kevin, if you've ever, I don't know if Kevin's ever been here before, but if you ever talk to Kevin or see Kevin, he can't just pitch. He has to sing. Like if there's a song involved, he sings it, right? So he sings the Friend Like Me in front of Alan Menken. And he loved it. He said, great, don't change a word. I mean, change the words. It's perfect. It's great. And we were like so worried that he was just not going to let us change the words, right? And it was just like, he was just so on board with whatever it takes to entertain, to get the story across, it's like, go for it. So that was a really, a great moment for us, a win, as you will. And that's it. That's it.
I had a quick question on Tiki Room. I'm one of the people that really, really likes it. I really like that rendition of it. So when you guys were working on the script, were you also kind of I think you were paying tribute to the fact that the original is the best because Iago gets fried at the end. So what about the jokes themselves? Did you work on them? Because if you stay in the theater at the very end and nobody's around, Iago says, "I'm going to go to take a nap at Hall of Presidents." So were you guys all kind of contributing jokes to make it work?
Yeah, because when you think the show is over, that doesn't mean the theater is empty. It takes time to empty the theater. So we did that. We also did that with Muppets a little bit. With the Sadler and Waldorf talking. So that was a lot of again, Kevin. That's traditional Kevin stuff, those jokes. One thing I should mention about the recording, obviously the guys are older now, so we did have to de-age them in the audio a little bit to make it sound a little bit younger. But that was just something that the audio guys were able to do really quickly and easily. But yeah, it was just, you take a look at you think about the character itself and what would the character say? Right? You look at the personality of that character. It's like, what would they say? Well, they would be disrespectful for the Hall of Presidents, perhaps, or they would just be like Kermit or Miss Piggy would say, "I'm going to go talk to Mick." Mick who? Mickey Mouse. That was like the Muppet. That's their personalities. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Yep.
And I think if you like Paul, did you guys like Paul? All right. I think we're going to have him back because he worked on a ton of stuff and has a load of stories. So we're so thankful to have you with us, or to have you, with us today.
Yep,
and
thank you.
Mr. Tomorrowland. I love it.
We could do a whole day on Alien Encounter, which I'm glad we didn't do today.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You're teasing us.
Thank you, Paul. Hey, just want to make an announcement before we move on to our next thing. We will be auctioning off our Jimmy Mulligan art before we leave here today, so make your calls to your financial advisors and things like that. We just wanted to get that in everybody's mind, so on to the show, on to the next thing.